Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This right here is the CKF SSE, and interesting knife by the Custom Knife Factory, and so let's go on ahead and take this little guy apart. One thing to note though, this has a custom anodization done by buddy of my buddy Nico, and this has been sent along by my buddy Nico, so I want to thank him very much for doing that and for allowing me to take it apart. That's an important step there. Noticing a fair amount of tension on the pivot screw as I'm pulling that loose, which is whoa there. Well, that's new and interesting. So okay, the tooled side of the pivot screw is actually the female side. That's not something I've dealt with before, but you know what? There it is. That's life. And this is a Torx T8 bit, by the way. So yeah, let's go ahead and take the rest of this guy apart here. We can see here that these are Chicago screw arrangements on the other side. That's something I usually respect in a lot of ways, just because it makes it a lot easier if a screw strips out. CKF can just send you a new pair of screws rather than having to, send back spaces and whatnot. So this guy has come apart pretty straightforwardly, and wow, look at the vividness of that anodization. That's nice. Anyways, let's go on ahead and take it the rest of the way apart here. Honestly, there's not a whole lot to report on here. It's relatively straightforward, relatively vanilla. You've got yourself a frame lock going on here. You got a lock bar insert. You've got that's the screw for the insert. You got a detent ball. Beautiful. And you got a single row bearing sort of system going on here. Knife is very smooth, was very centered. One thing I'm going to highlight here, actually, that is a little bit strange, is that the stop pin here is actually slightly loose. And so I'm wondering, it could be the case. No, it is a little loose in and of itself. So what I'm actually going to do is when I put this guy back together, I'm going to use a little bit of a thicker grease and put it right inside there. Hopefully that'll secure the stop pin a little more, because I thought I felt it rattling a little bit earlier as I was playing with the knife, and so maybe that'll help that a little bit here. Try and get the bearing popped on out of here. Being careful not to damage this nice little ano job here. Nice little ano job. This is why I shouldn't talk in public. Anyways, let's go ahead and clean this off. It looks like it was put together recently with nano oil, some equivalent sort of lightweight oil, so I don't really need to be doing this cleanup, but you know what, I'm gonna anyways, just because it helps me to evaluate knives on an even keel. That's one of the reasons I like doing these disassemblies with the review, and I think I've said this before, but if I'm able to do this breakdown, I know exactly how this knife has been configured, put together, whatnot. It's been optimized to my taste, to my standards, and, I think they're good standards overall, one would hope. And so, everything's on an even keel. As opposed to if I'm not able to do that, I'm really evaluating the knife if, however it was made, put back together by the last jackass. And so, it would be no fair to me if I were to, or to the rest of you guys, if I were to evaluate one knife that had been put together with, WD-40 and transmission fluid, and then, another knife that was put together with, a high-end knife lubrication and, properly tuned. So, in a lot of ways, people ask, Nick, do you take everything in your life apart? Well, no. I'm an analytical guy, so kind of, yeah. But, that's part of the reason I do this for the channel. It is actually legitimately a part of the review. And it also lets me see things like all of this interior milling here, which is how this knife is relatively lightweight. CKF does very good work in terms of your milling. The rest of this knife is pretty vanilla, actually. Like I said, there's not all that much of interest going on here. So this should be kind of an in-and-out sort of affair. M390 blade, that's nice, and I like writing it on the flipper tab here. Maybe you can see it. It's a subtle place to put those sorts of informations. Yeah, that should be plural, sure, why not? Yeah, so we're good to go. Let's go ahead and put it back together. I'll go ahead and drop the pivot screw back onto here. I'm going to use some 10-weight nano oil because this is a nice flipping action. I want to give it the gift of good flipping action. So putting a little bit on the pivot there, and then I'm just going to drop a little bit into the bearing race here. And note that the bearing race is a separate piece of steel. Well, it looks like steel, which is good because that means the bearings spin against the steel, which is going to be hardened, etc. And it looks nice and thick, so that's good. Not going to be having the Spyderco Gale Bradley advocate issue that Apostle P is on it there about at the time of this filming. I'm going to go ahead and grease the tent ball path here, nice and smooth, and go ahead and just put a little bit more on here. Yeah, I'm drowning the knife a little bit. That's okay. These knives don't mind being run a little bit wet. Okay, now let's deal with that stop pin. So the stop pin thing is a little bit strange, but that's okay. What we're going to go ahead and do is take a little tub of nano grease that I've got here handy. This is a contact lens case that I've repurposed. But I'm going to take my little oiler tool, which is a watch spring bar tool, because I am making this up as I go. Then I'm going to actually, before I do this, I'm going to use a little Q-tip. I'm sorry, generic cotton swab, to clean out this little hole here. And then do the same thing on the other side. Then I'm going to use this to drop a dollop, using the technical term, of the grease into each side of this. And that should help to secure that stop pin a little bit more carefully, which is nice. And will lead to a little bit less rattling, ideally, and yeah. So there we go. The other problem that you can potentially have with a really rattly stop pin is vertical or horizontal blade play. Generally, that one's vertical. Actually, that's always vertical. I'm full of crap. But anyways, and so a little of that grease has gotten out of there, so I'm just going to use the edge of this little towelette to clear it out, just so it doesn't get into the bearings. Not the end of the world if it does, but it is something that will gum the process up. And now I'm flipping the blade around. I happen to know that this is sharp as heck, so I don't want to mess with it. But okay. So there's that. Next step is going to be for me to, yeah, I'll go ahead and prep the washers on the other side here. Let's see here. Use some nano oil. Got a nice big drip already. These washers do have two sides to them. One side has a little bit more sort of injection molding debris on it. I'll consider that to be the side that faces away from the blade. Does it really matter? Probably not, but why not? Just put it there. Spin it around a little bit to lubricate the balls. I shouldn't talk. And now I can put the knife the rest of the way together. I'll put a little bit under the tent ball, on the ball bearing race up there. So, done with the lubrication. Let me put that away so it doesn't drip everywhere. Put the last one away from the last disassembly, which was also a CKF from my buddy Nico. Now I'm going to go ahead and put these back spacer pins through here. I'm sorry, these Chicago screws, back spacer pins. Well, they are technically pins that go into the back spacer, but my goal for this is just to be able to have the back spacer be in position and held in that rough place. Unfortunately, this little guy down here is sticking out most of the way, so it's not a tight fit, but should do the trick. I'm going to slide this on here, and hopefully, I got to move the back spacer back into position. I'm going to use a little bit of Loctite, and I'm going to drop in these screws here. I'm not using very much of it, but just enough so that they don't come popping loose. I may actually need to press this other side of the Chicago screw upwards. Oh, the other Chicago screw fell out. So I'm going to bring this guy down to rough tightness here. Hopefully you can see that. Unfortunately, my back spacer is moved because this screw fell out. But I'm going to see if I can't just reposition it by... I want something that's not so pokey. I'm going to use this right here. I'm just going to... My goal here is to align the hole with the back spacer in such a way. There we go. The only reason I went in here with a swab rather than this oiler tool is because I didn't want to scratch up that anodization. If any of you have ever faced a scratched ano, it's not a pleasant thing. Sorry, couldn't resist. That joke is way funnier if you speak Spanish. Just saying. Alrighty. So, I'm going to go ahead and lock this in here. And again, I'm not using a whole lot of torque yet. I'll torque those down at the end. Now, finally, I want to drop in the pivot. Now, again, we have the weird thing of the tooled side of the pivot is the male side. Is the female side, that is. Generally in life, men are the tools. Just saying. God, I'm full of terrible humor tonight, aren't I? I should probably stop. But, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of apply a little bit of pressure here and then just rotate this side gently. Hopefully this counter pressure will be enough. Lock that on down. And I'm going to go ahead and release, well, I'll secure this Chicago screw a little more thoroughly here. Lock it down. With the CKF, I really shouldn't be worried about the tension of the back spacer screws affecting the centering. And in fact, I should not, because the centering is freaking perfect. There we go. That's popped loose. This pivot is right now cranked all the way down. I want to back it off just a little bit and see if I can get a little bit more performance out of the blade. There we go. Now that introduced some side-to-side play, so I'm going to go ahead, put it back in there, and crank. There we go. Now back here, I'm still feeling a little bit of looseness. I'm thinking that's just, I need to torque this a little bit more here. There we go. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, great. So we're all set here. That was pretty straightforward. The knife is well constructed. It's a CKF, so they usually are. But the amount of interior milling is going to help make this as lightweight as it is. The action is very good. You know, overall, there's not much to say about this knife aside from nice, well done, in terms of the construction department. The rattling stop pin is the only thing that's a little bit questionable, but you know what? In the grand scheme of things, those are micro-level rattles that don't really bug anybody. Well, anybody who isn't me. Let's be real about it. So, yeah, there you go. I hope this was interesting, that well, if you get an SSE, that you have a nice time with it. But mostly, even if you don't, that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.